Hi everyone, welcome to the first edition of Rolling Conversations from Wheelchair Sports New South Wales. I'm Mick Garnett, and it's great to be with you. For all of those out there that are logging on, you'll see that our guest for the very first Rolling OAM, one of our greatest ever athletes, and it's a real privilege to work alongside Louise at Wheelchair Sports New South Wales, and also the opportunity to have a yarn like this today. So, Louise, welcome to Rolling Conversations.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
It's great to have the opportunity to talk like this. What I was hoping to do was to start at the very beginning. And whilst we'll get to the wonderful achievements that you had in sport over many years, I was wondering if we might learn a little bit more about young Louise and what life was like for you growing up in Perth. So interested in, obviously you ended up being a wheelchair racer, but what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Well, I had no idea. I think Paralympics wasn't at my forefront of my mind. I didn't even know they existed or anything like that existed for me. I was born with a disability, so I don't know any different. I went to a regular primary school and participated in as much sport as I possibly could. Wherever I could join in, I definitely did. And then, yeah, didn't get introduced into wheelchair sports until I was about 8 years old. So maybe a late bloomer compared to some of the guys now.
And what sort of sports were you interested in then as a young person growing up in Perth?
When I was first introduced to wheelchair sports, I did everything. It was great. It was so much fun. Initially, before I was introduced into wheelchair sports, I did swimming. I did a lot of swimming because my older sister was a great swimmer, and so it was natural for me to also do that. And I was taught to swim as at a very young age. So when I went into wheelchair sports, I did swimming with them. I did athletics. I did the track and the field. I did basketball. I did anything that I had on offer. It was a lot of fun, and I think the best thing was just mixing with people who had similar disabilities to myself. We're all in wheelchairs, and it didn't matter.
Yeah, great. And in terms of a swimmer, were you any good, and what was your favourite stroke?
Oh, I was okay. I did compete at junior and senior level as a swimmer, but didn't go any further than that. But yeah, no, I did okay, and I used to compete with in my local swim club as well. But you know, as the kids could kick and I didn't, they obviously got quicker than me as they got older, and I kind of stayed with the younger kids.
And what about sport, schoolwork for you? Like, what did you enjoy? What sort of subjects were you good at? I mean, were you a mathematician as a young person, or not so much?
No.
Right.
I think at primary school I was just pretty average, I suppose, more than anything. And high school I enjoyed more English and reading, and not necessarily reading books at the time, but like the English and learning that. But yeah, maths was probably one of my worst subjects, unfortunately. But sport, I was really good at that.
Right. And so you played a bunch of wheelchair sports throughout high school then. At what point did you think, actually, I could, do something with this? Did you have a moment in time where you felt like perhaps this was your path?
I was fortunate to have one of my first coaches ever, and he was my coach for a very long time. Was Frank Ponta, and he went to the first Paralympics ever in 1960 in Rome, and he was like a stalwart of wheelchair sports in WA, and he got us all involved and was our motivation. He trained us for all the sports, and he was the one that really saw something in me. And I was just having fun, and I'm a slightly competitive person, so
Really?
yeah, just a little bit. So he was the person, I suppose, more than anything, that saw something in me and really encouraged me to compete at a very young age and continue on and do my very best, and also try and control me at times in terms of my confidence and my sportsmanship, I could say.
Okay. And so what brought you to Sydney? I mean, at what point in your development then as a sports person did you come to Sydney?
Well, I had been to a couple of Paralympics, and of course, Sydney was going to be hosting the 2000 Paralympics, and as the profile of the games and myself and everything was getting bigger and better, it was just so much easier for me to be on this side of Australia, and so I made the decision to move to the East Coast. Flying backwards and forwards to even the US and to the East Coast was getting very tiring and very taxing. So I decided to move here in 97. So I've been here for a bloody long time now. So it was kind of cool though. I got to see, the Sydney Olympic Park precinct really evolve, and the track there and everything, everything that's there now. And it was fantastic, and, a really good move for me and my sponsors, and just to be able to fulfill, I suppose, every opportunity that came my way. And so, yeah, it worked out really well, and I've been here ever since.
And do you get home to Perth then much? I mean, what connection do you have back to where you came from?
I still have a big connection to Perth. Of course, my family, my mother and my sister still live there. So I do get back every now and again. They come and visit me as well. Obviously, still got a lot of friends there as well. So, yeah, backwards and forwards a little bit, but not too much. It's nice when they come and visit me and we can have a bit of time in Sydney.
Yeah, nice. So having made the move to Sydney then, did you adopt our AFL teams, or do you remain Western Australian in terms of your footy team?
Oh, AFL. Well, that's interesting. I suppose I was a West Coast Eagles supporter, but I have been to some Swans games, and GWS, of course, as well, who I tend to follow as well, with netball as well. So, yeah, all over the place, I think. I did live with two housemates that had relatives that played for Port Adelaide. So we went to a few of those games too. So it's good. I just enjoy going to any live sport. So, yeah, I don't know where my loyalty lies anymore.
So you've pretty much got a team in every state, so you've got the bases covered.
I am covered.
What other sports do you enjoy then? I mean, obviously you're into the Paralympic sports in a big way, but is there anything else you love to watch?
I think I like almost all sports pretty much. If I can get the rules and know what's happening and how competitive it is and what they have to try and achieve, then yeah, I love everything. It's just fantastic. I love going to the netball. I got a bit addicted to that when my housemate was the coach, and I've got a few friends who also coach and is involved with it. So I really enjoy going to that. I don't mind going to State of Origin, NRL. Of course, AFL as well, but I've been to the cricket quite a few times at T20. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that I love going to, all the different sports. It's fantastic. I love to see the athletes and how athletic, they are and their achievements. And yeah, it's just fantastic to see. And, working with the New South Wales Institute of Sport, I see a lot of athletes in there, and you see how hard they work and the effort they put in. So it's fantastic to see them compete when you see them day in and day out as well.
Yeah, nice. You mentioned Sydney 2000. We must talk about Sydney 2000. What an incredible time it was in this city that we live in. What was it like for you? It must have been a life-changing experience to go through both the Olympics and the Paralympics.
Yeah, definitely. To say it was full on is an underestimation. I think I did compete twice for Australia, which is I was very fortunate to do that. First at the Olympic Games in a demonstration event. It was an 800 metres, and I had the opportunity to compete there in front of 110,000 people and win. So it was pretty memorable. Something I won't forget ever again. So that was fantastic, and then come back a couple of weeks later, and of course do the Paralympics and compete again for my country, and more than one event, and be full medal status. And it's I think it's a highlight of any athlete's career to have home games, in the peak of their career. So very fortunate, and just the way it was perceived. And I think Sydney 2000 was definitely a turning point in Paralympic Games. I know I'm extremely biased, but I do think it was a massive turning point in the way it was perceived and recognised, and the publicity and the acceptance that we gained throughout Australia and the world. I think it's just gone from strength to strength since those games.
Yeah, great. So, I've mentioned this to you in the past. When I watched you as an athlete, you would come across as a very determined, very driven, very focused person. Was that all for show? Because I now know you as, a lovely person that's quite different to that athletic sort of persona that you had. Was there any sense of gamesmanship in your approach to that, or was that genuinely you focused and determined?
I think I like to think that I can be both, but but yeah, no, definitely very focused on what I was trying to achieve. I think as an athlete, sometimes you have to be extremely selfish as to what you're trying to achieve and what your goals are, and so you need to be selfish about everything to achieve that. Um, it doesn't come easy. I think it's definitely hard to get. So I think you do have to be extremely focused. And as I said before, I'm just a little bit competitive. So I wanted to make sure that I did everything I possibly could to give myself the best chance of winning. But yeah, I was very determined, and I could be very stubborn, and but yeah, pretty competitive.
Mm. And does that competitive nature play out in any other aspect? I mean, are you competitive at absolutely everything? Are you, whether it's Monopoly, Scrabble, whatever, or do you confine your competitiveness to the track?
If you ask a few people, I'd say that they'd say I'm pretty competitive at most things. Yeah, definitely anything physically that I can try and compete at. Then I'm still competitive, even though I'm a little bit broken now. Uh, but yeah, definitely. I think it just goes through me. I'm way more competitive than some of my athletes as well.
Yeah, right. And so you've made that transition from athlete to coach, and not everyone does that successfully. Why do you think you've done that successfully? And would you count it as a success yet, or are you on your path to being a great coach?
Yeah, it's true. Not all athletes make good coaches, and I wasn't sure whether I would either. I decided when I was going to retire that I still wanted to give back to my chosen sport, or stay involved in my chosen sport. So giving back for me was, potentially becoming a coach, and I didn't know whether I'd be any good, but I did prepare for it as much as I could, and did a number of courses, had great mentors, and now been coaching for 16 years or so. So. I think I've done okay. I think I have a lot of insight, obviously, into my sport, but you need to stay on top of that. You also need to move with the times, and different things that are happening all the time. So I think I've done okay. I've had some great athletes along my career, and of course, coaching now Madison De Rosario to the Paralympics next year now. So yeah, I mean it's a dream of mine, and my ultimate goal would be to coach a Paralympic gold medalist. I've coached world record holders and world champions, so now let's try for the top.
Why not? As a coach, then you coach the wheelchair track and road group with Wheelchair Sports New South Wales on a Saturday morning, and you also coach Madison De Rosario, currently one of the great wheelchair racers in the world. Do you use the same principles for the young people that you're bringing along on a Saturday morning as well as Maddie, or how do you transition between being a coach of grassroots athletes and a coach for world champions?
I think there's definitely different approaches that I use, of course. Our group on Saturday morning is so diverse. We have different ages, different abilities, and different disabilities. We're all within, but we're all in race chairs, so I don't care. You come along, you have a great time. It's very social. It's also an opportunity to learn some good skills, to get your fitness up. And to enjoy the sport, which I think is probably one of the best things, to have a good experience and be part of a community. I think that's one of the most important things, more than anything, about the group on Saturday. Obviously, it's a lot different with Madison and some of the other guys that I coach on an elite level. We have really high goals in place, and their programming and their structure of everything of their program to get to their goals is very, very different. And probably I'm a little bit harder on them. Although you can ask the guys on Saturday morning if I'm tough or not. Um, but I think ultimately it is, to have a good experience with the sport, and I want to see it grow and become bigger and better. So that is my ultimate goal, and I want to see the sport grow. So where else would I be on a Saturday morning, really?
Absolutely. And in fact, you called out a bunch of the people that you coach on a Saturday morning, and I know some of them are online. So if anyone's got a comment about Louise as a coach, please feel free to share it with us.
You know what'll happen if you're not nice.
There you go. Double the amount of laps next when we get rolling again. You mentioned Madison de Rosario. She is one of the best wheelchair racers in the world at the moment. What do you think that Maddie's capable of over the next few years? You've seen many, many athletes, and obviously you were one of the greatest Paralympians of all time. What do you think Maddie's capable of doing?
I like to think Maddie's capable of anything she really wants. I think she's on a great trajectory. She has, obviously been she's a world record holder. She's a world champion. I do think she has the capacity to be a multiple medalist at Paralympics and finish in the top 3 absolutely within her chosen events. I think also she has the ability to conquer and challenge most of the marathons, the World Series marathons out there. So I think she's getting stronger and stronger and has that ability to go all the way. So it's very exciting to work with someone that has a lot of talent, but talent only gets you so far. You still have to put in a lot of hard work. So and she's also competing in all the events that I used to do, which is fantastic. So I keep telling her I'm living my life through you now. So
Nice.
it's exciting, but it's also extremely rewarding. I had a lot of success as an athlete, as an individual, and but I think the rewards are just as good, and I get just as excited to see my athletes do well. I think being part of someone else's journey is fantastic. And we often say we instead of just or I refer to her as just her doing it, but we do it together. And I'm often there on many of her sessions, and as I think I said before, I think I get more excited than they do about their sessions, which is pretty sad and pretty horrible sometimes for them when I'm more excited. But yeah, it's extremely rewarding being a coach and to see your athletes get to the next level or achieve something very small or move to the next level. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, great. Now, this is the show and tell part of our rolling
Right.
conversations and you mentioned medals earlier, and I think you might have one with you.
Yes, I was trying to think of things that I could show and tell today. There's lots of different stuff, I suppose, but I thought I'd bring probably my favourite medal, which is, of course, from Sydney 2000 Paralympic Games. It came in a lovely box that we got given. That's the medal, the box that came in. And when we were presented our medals, on the dais and that, we were given flowers, of course, and they were native flowers to Australia. And if you didn't know, obviously if you were international, you didn't know what these flowers were and what they meant to Australia. So they gave us like a card to show us like what all the flowers meant, and it actually has the information on the back as well, like where the flowers were from and all that kind of stuff. So that came in the box with your medal. And then it came, I'll just try and get it up there. It came in a box, like that. And this is actually one of my gold medals. I have 2 of them from Sydney. I didn't actually get them engraved. I don't know why, but one side has all the venues from the Sydney 2000 Games. So you can see the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge in the middle there, but around the outside it's got like all the different venues within Sydney Olympic Park of where the games were held. And then the back has the Sydney 2000 Paralympic symbol, which is that one there, and then of course the IPC symbol, which is the 3 teardrops, which has changed a little bit over the years now. But that's probably my favourite medal of all time, and that's from Sydney 2000. So and this is the one that's not scratched and dented, and so yeah, that's one of my favourite medals that I've ever had. So
Very nice. We're going to ask some questions, or have some questions from people watching on, but we've got one there from Maddie. Tell them what you said this morning when I said I didn't know what the Sydney or Athens medals looked like.
Oh, Madison. She's a shocker. Yeah, no, I was telling her this morning, what can I do for show and tell? And I said I thought I would do Sydney 2000, and she said I don't even know whether I've seen them before. But she might have. But yeah, there you go, Madison. Now you've seen the gold one, and I'm sure I could share the other ones with you if you really want me to one day. But yeah, no, they're something definitely that I'll treasure forever. And I don't have my Barcelona or Atlanta medals. They're back in WA.
Okay. So before we do take some questions, we just wanted to, or I was really interested in just to ask you a couple of other things in terms of hobbies, because I learned a couple of things while we were preparing to have a chat today. So one of them is how outstanding, apparently, although I've never tasted it, your banana cake is. Is that right?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I've been told it's a pretty good cake, and I have my mother to thank for that. It's a very basic recipe, and maybe Karen McBride, I know you're online, you can vouch for it. I made you one the other day to take with you, take away with you. But yeah, so I don't mind baking the odd cake and sharing that.
And does that extend then? Are you a good cook elsewhere? Have you got like a signature dish we need to know about?
I don't know if I've got a signature dish, but no, I can make a few things. Do a good roast. It's not hard.
Nice. And you mentioned you're into gardening as well. What do you like to grow?
Yeah, I think it's sink or swim in my garden a little bit, but I do like the succulents, and I have roses, Mr. Lincoln red roses to be exact. They're my favourite, and they smell beautiful. So yeah, definitely, sink or swim in my garden a little bit. If you're not going to get watered too much and you survive, then you're doing all right.
Right, excellent. And what about music? What's on Louise Sauvage's playlist? And if you're comfortable sharing, of course, is there some daggy stuff there? You can keep it to yourself.
I like 80s.
Okay,
So almost anything 80s in isolation at the moment, or, restricted to, obviously being in the gym and all that kind of stuff. I've been listening to a lot of 80s stuff and getting me through my sessions. So yeah,
nice. And
almost
and
anything.
what do you do at karaoke? What's your signature tune?
Oh, you've asked me this before.
I know, but I
Uh,
can't remember the answer.
I think I said Jimmy Barnes or something.
Yeah, nice. Hey, let's if you're ready to take some questions. Alison asks, how are your athletes feeling about the Paralympics being pushed back a year?
Yeah, I think all athletes are a little bit different. A lot of them had qualified, they were ready, they were very much peaking for that time, and had everything, their plans set in place. So I think it's very disappointing for a lot of athletes that were extremely ready. And then there's the other side of it, where some athletes probably are thinking, wow, I've got another year and a half almost to prepare myself, which is fantastic. I can be faster, I can be fitter, I can be better prepared and a better athlete. And I think we need to look at the positives definitely, and not look at the negatives, because we do have another year and a bit to go. So let's look at it in that respect. For myself and Madison, it's a good opportunity to do a lot of base work. It's a good opportunity to work on our marathons. We've got to look at all the positives towards it, and it's not going to change. I think it's fantastic that they've set new dates, so at least we've got a goal in mind now, and we know what's happening. So when things are up in the air, I think it's very hard for anyone to really know what they're doing or find it difficult to focus. So I think more than anything, having the dates in place has been really, really good. And I think we do really need to look at the positives and how that's going to work. And yep, we have more time to get faster and stronger.
Indeed. Now, I'm not sure about this question. You can pass on that if you like. Um, just with
David.
regard, it's probably going back to the musical part earlier, but let's assume that's a Jimmy Barnes one, unless you've got a specific one in the shower.
No, I
No.
don't know. I don't sing in the shower.
Oh, there you go. Thanks, David, for the question. So Beck Rippon asked, what do you bring to your coaching that sets you apart from others? What a good question.
Oh, go Beck. I know Beck quite well.
Mm,
um, I suppose more than anything, I think something that a lot of the athletes, not necessarily my own athletes, but athletes that that I've worked with on the national team, and especially when we're away on tour, like at a World Championships or a Paralympics, or even on our Swiss trip. I think a lot of the athletes have a different connection with me sometimes, as opposed to some of the other coaches or staff that we travel with, because a lot of the times they know that I know how they're feeling and what they need at that time, and that they don't have to explain things to me, so to speak. So it's kind of a different connection, I suppose, I have with some of the wheelchair racers than some of the other coaches. Not to say that you can't, get that as well, but I do think that's something that does set me apart a little bit from some of the other coaches. But I think every great coach, has to have great communication skills, and to be able to communicate with that person on that level is probably one of the most important things. But yeah, I think being there and having done it before makes me a little bit different.
Great. Who would win an 800-metre race at their peak, Louise or Madison?
I'd say probably Madison. She can go way faster than I ever used to go. Definitely. But
Okay.
can I draft you, Madison? Because maybe I'd come around and give you a bit of a nudge.
Nice. Karen McBrien asks, how does it feel to be the first Paralympian recognised as a legend of Australian sport?
It's a huge honour. I think being inducted into the Sport Australia Hall of Fame in the first place, being the first athlete with a disability to do that, was huge. And I think it just set the tone in terms of, that we need more athletes in there, and that we need to be recognised at that level. And then to be recognised last year as the 41st legend was so special. And it was fantastic having, my family and my friends there. And I think it goes to show the recognition that I think not only myself, but I think all athletes with a disability deserve to be recognised for the achievements that we have. And yeah, it was insane. It was a fantastic time, and a great night. And I was, just so honoured to have everyone there, and of course my mum.
Yeah, it was very special. Joanne Broadbent, how do you deal with difficult athletes?
Joanne. I could ask you the same question, Joanne. Joanne is a cricket coach. I suppose more than anything, I just have to, see what the problem is more than anything, and try and work around that. Again, I think it comes down to communication. How are you going to communicate to get the best out of each individual athlete? Everyone responds differently to lots of different things. They learn differently, and so you have to find another way. And I suppose that's just another, challenge to a coach, is to figure out how to make that happen. I don't deal with all my athletes in the same way, because if you did, then you wouldn't be able to do it. You wouldn't. Everyone's so different. So I think it's trying to find a way of communicating with them, and trying to figure out how to get the most out of them. So, but yeah, it is difficult sometimes, and I'll ask Joanne later.
There you go. Ben Lucas, what keeps you going re-coaching athletes after your years at the top in your sport and all the years you've put in past your retirement?
Oh,
Is
what
he
keeps
suggesting
me
you're
going?
old there? Is it? I don't know what.
I'm not as old as you, Ben. Ben's in New
Nice.
Zealand.
Okay.
I used to travel with Ben to a lot of the road races throughout the world, and he's from New Zealand, and we used to go to all the road races, which is really cool. What keeps me going? I think the love of my sport more than anything keeps me going. Every time I go to Switzerland every year for a competition, and I see some of the best athletes in the world and the best racers in the world, and it invigorates me more than anything, and it makes me want to come home and try new things, and work with my athletes even more. So I love it, and I love the sport. So and the people involved, and I want more people to have the experiences that I've been able to have through my sport. I think that's the most important thing. So yeah, it's. I think it's a great sport.
Nice. One of the great characters from our community, Richard Corjukes, asks, can you tell me about your early career in the Ausday 10K?
Oh, Ausday 10K has been part of my life forever. I did the second ever Ausday 10K. I didn't do the first one, which was in Centennial Park. When it moved to the Key, that's when I started, and I won my first junior event in the first year that I competed, so the junior women's category. And ever since then, I competed in it in almost every year until my retirement, and then made a cameo comeback in, I think it was 2009. Um, yeah, it was just a fantastic time to have this event. It was just amazing to have it in my home country and have the athletes and everyone come to see our city and our country and have that competitive nature. And it was fantastic. I didn't know. I mean, it was a great opportunity for me as a junior athlete, and then continuing on into a senior athlete to see these people come out was fantastic. I loved it. Still love it.
Julie, Duncan, what was your favourite sporting moment?
Oh, favourite sporting moments. Personally, it would have to be winning Boston Marathon and, of course, competing in front of a home crowd in Sydney 2000 and winning gold would have to be definitely up there more than anything. And now it's seeing my athletes compete and achieve their goals is just the most rewarding thing ever. Definitely favourite sporting moments, all involving my sport.
And we're getting close to time, but Najit Curry asks, what's your favourite food? And I imagine you can't name your own banana cake here. So what is
No.
your favourite food?
Oh, Najat, you know what I'm going to say, Lebanese. I work with Najat.
Okay. Any particular food within the Lebanese cuisine?
Oh, no, there's quite a few there. Yes, yes.
Yeah, well, we've had a wonderful time chatting, Louise. We could talk all afternoon, but we committed that we'd go for half an hour. I wanted to say thank you to everybody that's joined us online. We couldn't think of anyone that we would rather start off rolling conversations than with you, Lou, as our patron. I've worked across many not-for-profits and in sport over many years, and I can say, and I've said to you many times, I've never known a more participatory, more committed patron than you. So thank you for everything you've done for Wheelchair Sports New South Wales and continue to do for our athletes and our members. It's been wonderful for them to see you, that you're going well. I imagine you're keeping well and doing some training whilst in isolation.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to stay fit and healthy, just like everyone else, and stay safe. So, yeah, thank you for having me. I do appreciate it. And I hope everyone out there stays safe and keep that self-isolation and distancing.
Yeah, great message. Well, thanks for joining us. So for everyone watching along, Rolling Conversations will happen every Tuesday and Thursday at 5 p.m. This Thursday, we have the world's greatest wheelchair rugby player in Riley Batt. We are going to be talking wheelchair rugby, but we're also going to be talking about growing veggies, which he's incredibly passionate about. So join us again on Thursday at 5 p.m. for Rolling Conversations with Riley Batt. And again, please thank Louise Sauvage, OAM, our patron, and one of Australia's greatest ever athletes in the first edition this afternoon of Rolling Conversations. Thanks very much, Louise.
Thanks.
See you guys.
Bye.